Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video, I'm going to show you guys how to play Above and Below with the Underforest and Desert Labyrinth expansion. Now this how to play video is going to be talking about all the modules and basically just how all the new mechanics work when you're playing with this expansion, this encounter book, okay? So also this could be useful to people who don't have this expansion, who might be curious what this expansion has to offer. For those who haven't looked into it yet, this could be helpful for them as well. So let's get started, okay? So let me move this out of the way. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the modules. So let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, zoom in just a little bit. There we go. Let's start talking about some of the modules you can add to the game. So, first of all, you can add the Villagers variant module to the game, which basically adds just some more villagers you can play with, okay? So, like this one, and this one, this one, this one, and this one. There's a couple others. There's a lizard folk that's already on the board, and there's a hog folk that's already on the board. But yeah, some of them are just, are pretty basic understanding, right? So you're probably wondering, obviously this is easy to understand that this villager can either build or recruit. But this one, what's the plus main on this? You're probably wondering. So whenever you decide to recruit with a villager who can recruit, but has this plus next to the feather, or quill, I should say, that means that when you recruit, it's gonna be -1 money for the amount that you're paying. So if the villager costs 5 money to recruit, but you're using this villager to recruit, it's only going to cost 4 money instead. So that's nice. So that's a nice little benefit. The hog folk is basically the same way. If you decide to use this hog folk here, you can, when you decide to build with him, it's going to cost 1 money less if you decide to build with this hog folk. So that's kind of nice, right? And the lizard folk also has this feather with the plus on it too. So that's basically all you need to really know about this villager variant. This is a module you can add to the game, but you don't have to. Okay, so that's one thing you don't have to add. Then there's a quests module that you can add. When you play with the quests, you will play with all of these face up, so everyone can see them, okay? And then when somebody gets, for instance, 2 potions and a mushroom, they can take this immediately, gaining the 3 victory points for the end of the game. This one means if somebody gets a fruit and 2 cider tokens, they get 3 extra victory points at the end of the game. They immediately take that if they beat someone to the punch, I mean, on that. Paper and a clay pot for 4 points, an amethyst and a rope, 4 points, a fish and an oar, 4 points. So they just add an additional way of scoring points, but also maybe you might be more tempted to build certain buildings that give certain goods like ore and fish. That might be more tempting to build those. If you see both of them out, you might want to go for that, so that way you can obtain this quest token first, right? So that's basically what these are just for. So that's a module that you do not have to play with. Okay, so that's the second module you do not have to play with, but you can add it to the game. Okay, so then let's talk about the third module, which will require me to show you some encounter cards here. So here's our encounter deck. Okay, and then you'll notice we have these tokens with treasure chests on them, okay? You'll shuffle these and put them all face down so you don't know what they do. Then at the beginning of each round, what you're going to do is you're going to place one of these onto the encounter deck, okay? Now, the first person that is going to take and do an encounter, if they have a successful encounter, a successful explorer, and they get to keep this card, then they also get to keep this token. But it's only available once per round. So if player 1 gets this, then that means player 2 will not get that round. But then the second round you replenish, just like if you were replenishing the cider tokens, you will replenish this, putting another one onto the encounter card, giving somebody else a chance to win one of these tokens for their gameplay. Okay, these tools, that's what they're called. They're called the tool module. So like I said, this is all modular, so this is something you can add but don't have to add when playing with this expansion. So let me explain what these do. So there's only 3 different types of tokens here, okay? There's only 3. So this walking stick, when you do an encounter, you may add one to one of your dice rolls. So let's say you had that fish folk and you needed a 5 to get 3 lanterns and you rolled a 4. You're like, I was just 1 off. Well, if you haven't used this walking stick that turn and you have it, you can flip it over, turning that 4 dice into a 5 dice, getting you your 3 lanterns. Instead of, what was it, 2 lanterns or 1 lantern if you don't roll high enough? So that could come in handy when you do an Explorer. But once you use it, you can't use it for the rest of the round. However, at the beginning of the next round, you get to replenish it. So this is something you can do once per round. Isn't that nice? If you got a couple of those, it could come real in handy. So then, here's another card. We have another token. This is the basket, okay? So let me explain how the basket is going to work. So give me a second. Okay, so here we have a card you might have in your village that has 2 clay pots on the card. Normally, when you would decide you want to take one of these clay pots, you're going to send a villager to basically go and collect one of the goods from the card to put into your town to collect. Now, you could put it right here, right away if you wanted to, you know, or you could just put it there, and that's fine. But usually, it takes a while to collect goods from cards because normally, you can only send 1 worker to collect 1 good at a time. But if you have this basket, okay, and I haven't used this basket this round yet, I can send this worker to instead send this worker to collect 2 goods, okay? 2 goods. That is nice, isn't it? Very nice. So then, if I, for instance, you're probably wondering, can I grab 2 from the same one? Do they have to be the same one? So let's say I had, let me find some paper. Let's say I had some paper here. Okay, I guess they're upside down paper. There we go. So let's say I had 2 cards, okay? And I was going to take this action, the basket, this action to get these goods, and I had this basket here. I could take both of them from the same card, and that would be fine, okay? Or I could do 1 of each. So I could do that. I can only do 2, so if I had multiple cards, I could only do 2, but I could take 1 from 1 card and 1 from another card, which means it'll come in handy for even those cards that have the arrows on them that only provide you 1 good per turn, and you had a couple of those. You could use that to take advantage of that too, which is nice. And then, of course, you can only use this once per round, so once you use it, you flip it over. But then, once the round is done, move on to the next round, you get to use it again. So you effectively can use it once every single round. So that will come in handy quite a bit. I know I used this one quite a lot when I played the game. So with this expansion, so that's a nice little benefit. This is my favorite of the 3 tokens for sure. Okay, and then the final of the 3 tokens is this Book of Knowledge. Now you'll notice it has a quill on it and a plus on it. So what this does is, let's say you want to recruit somebody. So let's move the board a little closer so we can get the villagers that are in recruiting area over here. Okay, so let's just say, for the point of argument, that my only villager is this guy left. You'll notice he has no quill above his head. So normally I could never send him to train a new person to my team. But if I have this token, I can use this token to send him to recruit somebody. And yes, you'll notice it has a plus on it. So once again, it's going to decrease the cost, making this nice lizard folk here, who would have costed me 2 money, only cost me 1 money to recruit. Isn't that nice? So that's a really useful tool as well, I found. Not as useful as the basket, but still quite useful indeed. And it's also going to decrease the cost. So that's another thing that you can add to the game. So this is the tool module, like I said. And like I said, it's modular. You do not have to use this tool module in your game. Okay, so now let's talk about what you must play with if you're going to play with this expansion. Well, one thing you're going to need is you're going to need these tokens in this game, okay? These tokens here, these 2 tokens, will represent a portion of our encounter cards, okay? So you will need them. This is for the underforest, to explore the underforest, these tokens that have a mushroom on them, and these tokens that have like a desert with a skeleton that's been probably sinking in the sand for quite some time, is for the desert labyrinth, okay? So these tokens and these tokens you will need for this expansion when playing with it. Another thing you'll need to play with when playing with this expansion is you'll need to play with supplies. These are supply tokens, okay? I'll explain what they do in a moment, but you must play with them. And then these tokens on the side, these 4 little tokens here, there's 4 different kinds. These are villager status tokens. And you also must play with these when you're playing with this expansion. So let me explain first how this is going to work here. So what you're going to do is, let's say you decide you're going to do an encounter, an explore action, right? And go into the Great Below. And you're going to choose some villagers. Let's just say we're choosing everybody to go into the Great Below, okay? Which is a pretty good number, usually. 3 is usually pretty good. So then you'll notice normally when you play with the game, you would just roll a dice and you would look up a number based on the dice roll. But when you choose to play with this expansion, you can pick which one you want to do. You can pick if you want to do the underground forest or if you want to do the desert labyrinth. I kind of mix and match each game. So let's say you want to do this one. What you're going to do is you're going to flip it over. Notice it's going to have some numbers on it. This one's got a 4, 5, and a 6. That means that if you were to roll one of these numbers, a 4, 5, and a 6, that means you're going to look up these encounters for the underground forest instead, if you decide you're going to play with this. Now, you could still play partially with the old encounter book, I suppose, if you want to. So if you roll 1, 2, or 3, you could still end up looking up in here if you want to, right? And then you'll look up through here if you roll a 4 through 6, right? But you could also technically just do this. Oh, wait, no, that's not a 4 and 5, 6. So you can only do one anyways. But there are some of these tokens I have found that had a 1, 2, and 3. So you're only allowed to use one, I would imagine, since some of them have 1s and 2s and 3s, and some of them have 4, 5, and 6. So you most likely, you have a 50% chance of getting to do an encounter from this book when you play with this expansion, because these only cover half of the card. But yes, there's definitely some 1, 2s, and 3s. So like this one is a 1, 2, and 3, and it was, the desert labyrinth. So yeah, so that's nice. So then that's what you would do, and you would look up an encounter and do the encounter just like you would normally do if you did happen to roll 4, 5, or 6 with this book here. So now let me explain the 2 modules that you must play with if you're playing with this expansion, okay? Some of the encounters that you'll encounter will give you these crates, these supply tokens, or supplies, okay, as a reward for what you did down there, right? And so what these do is, if you get one of these, you can use them to add 1 to your dice roll. So, it's like that tool that I showed you earlier that lets you add 1 to the dice roll, the walking stick. That's basically what these supplies do. You can use them to increase one of the pips on your dice rolls. And you can choose which one do you want to do it with, even after you've rolled for all 3 villagers, which is pretty nice. Now, at the end of the game, for every 2 of these you get 1 extra victory point. But there's not very many of them, and I suspect you're not going to encounter them too often. I haven't as of yet encountered an encounter that gave me one of those tokens, okay? So that doesn't happen too often. But yes, you could potentially, I suppose, get a couple of them to get an extra victory point for the end of the game. So then, what are these village status ones do? What do they do, okay? What do they do? Well, oh, and also, if you do, hold on. Oh yes, I just remembered. So, I just looked it up to double check. But let's say you do an encounter and there's not a single one of these supplies tokens available. If you do an encounter that says you get one of these, but they're all gone, you get a coin instead. So that's something at least, if they're all gone. So there might be some more encounters than the amount of encounters that considerably don't have that many supplies tokens here. But yes, that is something, okay? So then let me explain the village status, okay? So this one is for a poisoned villager, okay? So some of the encounters you do will cause your villagers to get status effects. And maybe you encounter something like a venomous snake, not that I have, or a venomous spider or something, and it bites one of your villagers, right? And you get poisoned. Well, then you get to choose which villager is going to take this, okay? So maybe give it to him, right? Not her or him, but maybe him because he's not as useful, maybe, or maybe him. It doesn't really matter, but he's not as useful for encounters, I suppose. So maybe we'll give it to him. So what's the problem with a poisoned villager? Well, all of these are negative effects, just so you know. But if you have a poisoned villager, when you decide to roll the dice for a poisoned villager in an explore action, as in an encounter, you have to decrease the pip of the dice roll by 1. So if you had just barely rolled a 4 for this villager, but he's poisoned, unfortunately, it ends up being a 3, and you don't get that lantern, which is unfortunate. So that's the problem with having a poisoned villager. Okay, so then what does this one do? Well, this is a greedy villager token, okay? So if one of your villagers becomes too greedy, when you do an encounter that gives you coins, and you have a greedy villager that's with you, okay? Well, that greedy villager is going to decrease the amount of coins you get by 1 coin. So that's gonna be a problem, but that's not always an issue because not all encounters give you coins, right? But it's something that could happen, and it will decrease the amount of coins you would obtain. You know those encounters that hardly give you anything and only give you 1 coin because you didn't do so well? Well, if you had a greedy villager, you might not get any reward at all for your encounter, which could be very unfortunate. So yeah, that's a problem for sure. So that's what happens if you obtain one of these tokens. You might become a greedy villager as well. Okay, so then let's grab this one next, the chicken. So some of the encounters you do might make you cowardly. And if you get the coward token here with the chicken on it, because you're, chicken, brock, block, block. So what this does is, well, first of all, you put it on a villager, and he becomes a cowardly villager, okay? So when you send a cowardly villager into into the Great Below, into an encounter to do an explore action, right? And let's say, normally in this game, when you decide you're going to injure one of your villagers to obtain an extra lantern, something that you can legitly do, and many players will do that, so that way they can get some sort of reward for their efforts because they just didn't roll very good, right? Well, if you have a cowardly villager, that cowardly villager cannot be injured to gain you a lantern. So you won't be able to injure a certain villager if that's the case. But I mean, if you were sending all 3 of these down, you could still use these 2, injure these 2 to get some lanterns. But that would mean you wouldn't be able to injure him because he's cowardly to get that extra lantern from him if he was the one that had this token on him, because he's cowardly. So that's, something to note. So, it might be unfortunate on occasion, but it's not super unuseful as some of the other ones, right? Certainly not as bad as being poisoned, that's for sure. Okay, and then the last token is melancholy. So this one is by far the worst token you could get. If you have a melancholy villager, every time you decide to use that melancholy villager for an action, you must roll a dice, okay? And if you roll a 1, or if you roll a 2, then the villager does nothing at all that round, and he goes right to bed, which is unfortunate, He goes right to bed, and he's done for the day because he's a melancholy villager. If you do happen to roll a 3 or higher, though, then you can still use him that round. Also, I should note this, if you do end up rolling a 1 or 2 and he doesn't do anything for you that round, you can still use another one of your villagers that you still have available to do something that round. So it's not a completely missed turn unless that's your last villager and now he's not doing anything for you. So that's unfortunate. So that's how Melancholy works. Now, if you ever are to gain one of these tokens, let's say you're to gain, you know, a poison or a melancholy or a coward or a greedy status effect to one of your villagers, but they're all gone. They've all been taken by other players and yourself, and you're supposed to gain another poisoned villager. Well, you don't gain another poisoned villager, so you just don't get one. So that's nice. So this could be handy for a 4-player game, because then one player that supposedly could have gotten poisoned now doesn't get poisoned because there's no more poisoned status effects available to, you know, receive. So they don't get anything negative at all. So that's nice. I mean, that's still rare, potentially, right? But it's nice that you could potentially get away with not having to worry about it. There is something else I'll mention. Occasionally, an encounter will actually give you a cider token. I actually encountered an encounter that gave me a cider token. So if you are to ever gain a cider token from an encounter, but there's no more cider tokens available because you've used them all up, you get 1 coin instead as an additional, you know, bonus. If you don't get a cider, at least you get something for your efforts as a consolation prize, if anything, right? And that's basically everything you need to know in order to play Above and Below with the Underground Forest and the Desert Labyrinth expansion. So, thank you guys for watching this How to Play video. I hoped it was helpful in, you know, helping you decide if this is an expansion you want to add to your collection. And I think you can buy this expansion on the Red Ribbon Games website store. I think this is available there now. So if you don't have this yet, I think it's available to buy now. So you can get it for yourselves if you haven't already. So don't forget to leave me a like if you guys like this video, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.